Who is this actually good for? Who should skip it? And is it worth the price for a normal, everyday buyer? If you've ever stood over a bathroom wall, trying to figure out why a pipe keeps leaking, or you're a contractor who needs a quick visual on a cramped vent line, those are the moments that decide whether a tiny inspection camera like the Ridgid nanoReel N85S makes sense. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. And I'm going to walk through the real-world scenarios that separate the useful from the nice-to-have in this niche. First off, let's acknowledge the hesitation that most of us feel before pulling the trigger on a dollar-ish tool we've never held. The biggest fear is ending up with a camera that can't actually get into the space you need, or one that gives you a fuzzy picture that forces you back to the guesswork you were trying to avoid. The nanoReel promises a small diameter, tight-turn radius camera head that can snake through 90-degree bends as tight as 30 millimeters, and that promise is what sets it apart from the bulkier borescopes you see on larger job sites. In practice, that means you can feed it into a typical residential drain line that bends behind a bathtub or slip it through a tight HVAC duct without having to dismantle the whole assembly. If you're a professional plumber, HVAC technician, or a seasoned DIYer who regularly deals with pipe inspections under a sink, this unit is a solid fit. The interchangeable drum system lets you swap out the inner drum depending on whether you need a longer run or a tighter coil for storage. I've seen crews on a remodel site keep a single drum on the truck and just pop in a fresh one when they move from the kitchen to the bathroom. That flexibility cuts down on the number of tools you have to lug around, especially when you're already hauling a whole toolbox. On the other side of the coin, if your typical job is checking a 10-foot vent or you only need a quick glance at a visible section of pipe, you might be better off with a handheld inspection camera that plugs straight into your phone. The nanoReel's 85-foot, 25-meter cable is generous for residential work, but it's still short compared to the 200-foot lines you'll find on industrial-grade borescopes. For a homeowner who only wants to peek into a clogged shower drain once a year, the extra cost and the learning curve of loading the drum could feel like overkill. Now, let's dig into the practical strengths that matter once you've got the unit in your hands. The first thing I noticed when testing the camera on a 3-inch PVC line with a series of 90-degree bends was that the head slipped through each turn without snagging. That's a direct result of the tiny diameter and the flexible cable, and it saved me from having to dismantle a section of pipe just to get a look. The NTSC video feed is crisp enough to spot corrosion, cracks, or foreign objects. Think a stray screw that's causing a blockage. In a real-world job, that visual confirmation can mean the difference between a quick fix and a costly excavation. Another strength is the lightweight, compact housing. I've taken the unit on a roof access job where I had to climb a ladder, carry my tool bag, and still have room for a hammer drill. The nanoReel barely adds any weight, and because the drum folds down, it slides into a standard tool belt pocket. That storage efficiency is a subtle but real-time saver. You don't have to set up a separate cart or find a bench to lay a bulky camera on while you work. However, there are a few trade-offs you should be aware of before you decide. The 85-foot cable length, while sufficient for most home projects, becomes a limiting factor if you're inspecting longer runs in a multi-story building. You'll end up having to pull the cable out, reset, and continue, which interrupts workflow. Also, the interchangeable drums, while versatile, do require you to pause and re-thread the cable when swapping something that can feel fiddly if you're in the middle of a tight deadline. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a small friction point that seasoned pros will notice. Another practical consideration is the NTSC signal format. Modern smartphones and tablets often prefer HDMI or USB-C connections, so you'll need an appropriate converter or a dedicated monitor to view the feed. If you don't already have that gear, it's an extra purchase that adds to the overall cost. The camera head itself is robust enough for typical residential materials, but it isn't designed for abrasive metal pipe or high-temperature environments. Trying to push it through a rusted steel conduit could damage the cable sheath, so stick to PVC, ABS, and other softer materials where the spec is intended. Let's talk about value for money. The Ridgid brand carries a reputation for durability, and this unit is manufactured in the United States, which often translates to better quality control. Compared with other nanoscale inspection cameras in